Okay, hi everyone. Welcome again to AuthorStory. I'm Alexander Lim, your host, and for this episode, I'm interviewing Kathleen Spivack, author of the book Unspeakable Things. And for those of you following along who are interested, you can go over now to the Amazon link in the description below the video and check out or get a copy of Kathleen's book. So Kathleen, welcome to AuthorStory. It's fantastic having you with us as our guest.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, cool. So, Kathleen, please just allow me to get something out of the way right now, right off the bat, so this question won't be hanging over our heads for the rest of the interview. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will have recognized the Drucker in your name. So let me just say right off the bat, get this out of the way, that yes, Kathleen is the daughter of Peter Drucker, whose philosophies and work on how businesses can be run has had a big impact on modern-day companies, particularly those in Japan. That said, Kathleen is a poet and an author in her own right and has been writing for literally decades, literally since before I was born. So we've got a living literary titan on our show for this episode, folks. So, Kathleen, I'm sure that people can research easily the facts about your career when you graduate from college and some of your works, but I'm particularly interested in how you got your passion for writing and for poetry. How did this all start?
Well, I think I have to say through my father and grandfather.
Okay.
Because when they came to this country, they were unemployed and they had a lot of time to spend with their young kids. Me and my brother. They later had 2 other children, but my father had a lot of time. He was looking for work. He couldn't find work.
Right.
And he would read the Greek myths to me. He read in English. He was trying to practice his English.
Right.
So
right.
he read the Greek myths and all these heroic stories to me. And just the cadence of it as a young child made me know that I wanted to live in that world.
Okay.
So I knew that was my book. And my grandfather had been, he had just barely escaped Vienna. We had lost a lot of family. And my grandfather, who is one of the people in the book actually, went on to become a professor at Berkeley in economics. But when he was older, he started writing poetry and novels and traveled to Italy to translate the writer Leopardi, and he insisted I keep reading in German, and he was always criticizing my mother for not keeping up my German and so forth.
Okay.
But I just lived in the world of fantasy. That was it.
Right. Okay, but was there a particular incident that made you think, this is rather interesting. I can make something out of this?
Oh, there wasn't anything particular. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Alex, but there was no big aha moment. It just, this is what I was going to do and be. I was going to write, I was going to teach.
Oh, okay.
And I just knew it, and my brother says I would bribe him with little lifesavers to be my student, so I could play teacher. So.
Okay.
But I knew that, I had to earn a living, right? And
right.
At that time, and as you point out, before you were born, there weren't a lot of avenues for writers and or for women to earn a living. So, and then later I decided I had to know everything, so I went to work in factories and, tried everything so I could have more experiences to write about. But I always knew that that's what I wanted to do.
Nice.
Or be.
Okay, cool. That's great. I mean, you knew exactly from the start then.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I did. And I realized that's lucky. I mean, that doesn't always happen, but it just, sometimes I think, how can I explain to, like, my whole life has been walking into a room and seeing a white page or a white screen and beginning to put some ideas or images down, and that is such a thrill. But how could I explain this to anybody else? spent my whole life doing this, and well, I've had a lot of experiences, of course, but I thought, well, maybe when I die, they'll put it on my gravestone. She had a lot of experiences and wrote about them, or they might put, she tried everything once, something like that.
Okay.
But I just knew that this is what I was going to do, and it was going to be. I would never say that I was a writer. It wasn't that I was going to be a writer. I was going to. It was always a process to me, not just a block-like thing that fell in my head,
Right. Okay. Cool.
I do wish we could see each other, because I would be. I am smiling at you, Alex, as we talk.
Well, I'm smiling too. I mean,
yeah.
It's very interesting stuff.
Feel it.
Yeah, very interesting stuff.
Well, nice to talk to you.
Yeah. So, Kathleen, among all the experiences that you went through, that you did, what were some of the most interesting ones for you?
Well, in terms of this book, Unspeakable Things,
right?
Again, as a refugee, we were in one room, and I was often called upon to share my bed with some old woman coming out of the Holocaust.
Right.
And they would tell me their stories at night, whispering them, and they were hair-raising, the stories.
Right.
And one of them was the person who became the central character in this novel, the Rat.
Right.
Call her the Rat. And she wasn't actually called the Rat, but she was named after another small, vulnerable, furry animal. She had huge circles under her eyes from suffering.
Right.
The Rat in my story is incredibly beautiful. Heartbreakingly beautiful, deep, deep, deep eyes, whiskers, and is a hunchback.
Right.
And the Rat, the real person,
right,
would tell me these tragic stories of, for instance, trying to escape to Manchuria, where her husband was, to escape from Vienna to Manchuria, and her children dying, 2 of her children dying on the way.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking stories that, as a child, I just couldn't contain. I remember writing a long poem in quatrains about this situation.
Right.
She also had sold herself to Rasputin, and she would start talking. We're lying in bed, it's midnight. Everybody else is supposedly asleep in this one room.
Right.
And at a certain point, she would break off because she realized she was talking to a child, and she'd say, and then we did unspeakable things.
Okay.
And at that, she would turn over and fall asleep.
Okay.
And of course, I did not fall asleep. I would lie there looking at the ceiling, thinking, "Oh my God, what could these unspeakable things possibly be?"
Right.
So, these kinds of contact experiences, things that were not spoken. The title refers to, we did unspeakable things, but also, as refugees, the parents don't speak about what they've gone through to the children.
Right.
And the children don't speak about what they're going through to the parents.
Right.
And I think this is true of many refugee families, and you end up with this shadow over the children and even the grandchildren. What are these unspeakable things?
Right.
And I find that my generation, I'm the just born here.
Right.
We are in a way, the witnesses, and if we don't write about what happened to the best of our knowledge,
Yes.
this will be lost.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a lot of wonderful books being written by the first generation who's come to this country from wherever.
Yeah.
You know, they feel they have to write because it's been forbidden even to talk about such things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I could mention a whole bunch of writers who have done this beautifully, and you know, Amy Tan and Maxine Hahn Kingston, for instance,
Right.
and you know, Edwige Danicott. I mean, you could go on and on with writers who felt they had to write or somehow record what happened
Yeah.
before it was completely lost.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, if you're not gonna talk about it, but you know, the stuff that happened, it's got to. Other generations have to know what it's all about, what happened, and if you can't talk about it, then I guess writing is the next best option. I mean, the best option available other than that.
Well, I think that when I presented this book, it often does speak to other first generation. You know, the parents want to put what they've suffered behind them. They have to in order to go forward.
Right.
You know, but then the children feel it's important to know it, to write about it, to name it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay, so let's backtrack a little, Kathleen. For the benefit of our listeners who aren't aware of this book, what's the story? Can you just summarize the story briefly?
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay.
The story, Unspeakable Things, concerns a family that has escaped from Europe and is living in New York during the Second World War.
Okay.
And from New York, they are trying to get other refugees out.
Mm-hmm.
They're also trying to adjust. They have lost parts of themselves, parts of their families, parts of themselves.
Right.
They have to try to put themselves together around those losses.
Right.
So it's the story the story is how do they reconcile themselves to the losses? How can they go forward?
Right.
What will that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're all struggling to find the lost parts of themselves, and some of these parts are lost forever.
Right. Okay. All right. Cool. So, what inspired you to write this book? I mean, you did mention first generation writers. Was that part of the inspiration behind you writing this book?
Oh, this particular book.
Yes, this particular
I want to
book.
say it's my 10th book. I want to say it's my 10th book.
Okay.
And that I wrote 2 novels completely unrelated to this, which I just wiped off my hard drive. They just weren't good enough.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk then about putting all of that into the hopper.
Mm-hmm.
I was teaching in Paris
Okay.
at a time when France was just starting to look at their role in World War II.
Uh-huh.
France also had a huge number of unspeakable things. They hadn't really looked at Vichy. They hadn't really looked at their collaboration.
Yep.
France had, ever since Dreyfus, France had always had a tradition of anti-Semitism,
Mm-hmm.
but they rushed to turn in their Jews even before the Germans asked them to.
Right.
And several things inspired me.
Okay.
When I first went, the first year that I was teaching in France, and I've been teaching there since 1990.
Right.
The first year, I had a student, a young woman, and she gave me a ride back to where I was staying. And said in English, because I only spoke English to my French students, and she tried to say in English,
right,
that she had grown up at Drancy, which is where France's first concentration camp. That her grandfather and father, I think father too, had been guards there.
Oh.
And that she had seen the scratches made by fingernails, people desperate to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now this was a very strange confidence for a student to tell the visiting American professor.
Right.
And the French professors, I mean my French colleagues, said this is something that she would never tell us.
Mm-hmm.
Never. And English, you see, was a safe language.
Right.
In other, if you're speaking a foreign language, it's a safe language. You can try things and say things that maybe they don't seem as real, as if you spoke them in your own. So that was the first thing. Then France had, they suddenly found Klaus Barbie, that terrible Nazi doctor who was found in South America.
Right.
By a French couple and their son who were very active, and there was an exhibit. And the third thing was that France started having the trials of Maurice Papon, who'd been a functionary at Vichy.
Right.
And suddenly France was looking at Vichy. Right. There was a commemoration, and I went to it, and I was surprised because it was just very, very, like the Hasidim, very Orthodox Jews. The non-Orthodox Jews were still basically in hiding.
Mm-hmm.
So I was absorbing all of this. And then, of course, I was also looking at the fact that I've been brought up in the States. I always felt, I brought up in Vermont after the New York thing. Right. And I always felt, in the States, I always felt kind of not quite belonging, half European, not quite American.
Right.
And when I was in Europe, I felt, I was American.
Okay.
I was trying to reconcile the two parts of myself, my American and my European.
Right.
And my parents would say, well, why France? Why France? Why do you want to be in Europe? And I said, I just have to put together the parts of myself. I have to understand. And France allowed me to do that. Now, I've traveled in other countries, but I have, the shadows, the memories, and so forth are too strong. I don't feel I could live there.
Right.
But in France, this was, so I was thinking about this, and at the same time, I had taught for a number of years in France, and you can only, as a visitor, teach for a number of years, and then they can't keep you on. Well, France had urged me to apply for a Fulbright, which would allow me to write and stay on.
Right.
And I did, and suddenly I had time to write, thanks to the Fulbright Commission. So, in order to do that application, I thought, what do I want to write about? And I wrote maybe the first 5 pages.
Okay.
And turned it in. And to my surprise, I was accepted. And these 5 pages took place in the New York Public Library, watching my grandfather, though he's not, he's fictionalized in this, watching my grandfather wheeling and dealing and trying to help people get relatives out.
Right.
So those 5 pages turned into a novel.
Nice. And that's how Unspeakable Things, and that's how the novel came about. Interesting. Okay, so Kathleen, the story's received a lot of reviews from what I've seen. Some people like it a lot, while others have this difficulty grasping all that took place in the book. As some of them say that the writing is somewhat surreal. What made you decide to write the book out in this way? Was it a conscious decision on your part? Something like maybe an experiment to push the boundaries as a writer? Or was this the way of presentation that best fit the bill?
That what? Didn't hear you, that last bit.
Was it the way you presented the story in the book? Was it the best way that you could find to present the story?
Well, I'm a poet first, so
Okay.
The book is very poetic.
Okay.
Each character has their own, in my mind, has their own music. For instance, maybe Brahms or Schubert or Schoenberg, and I would put on the piece of chamber music. I want to amend this by saying that I went to Oberlin College in music as well as in literature and history, and I was a cellist.
Right.
And I love chamber music. So the book is based on musical construction, and each character has their music, and I would put that music on, blast it full volume, and just go with it.
Okay.
Now I have to say, looking back, well, some of it might be over the top.
Right.
I really let myself go on it. I could say for anybody, I did show the book to my parents who were still alive.
Okay.
I showed the first draft.
Okay.
And thank God, in the dedication, I'd say, of course, to my parents who laughed at all the right places.
Right.
Because they laughed at things like my crazy doctor.
Right.
Who is a total villain. I mean, beyond villainy. And I said to my editor, gosh, maybe I could take out some of this. It doesn't have to be that horrible. She said thoughtfully, well, unfortunately, Kathleen, he does. Just leave it in.
Okay.
But, I did think about it afterwards. Thought,
right.
Maybe a little off the top, and, just take it with a grain of salt, readers.
Right.
Some of it's supposed to be funny.
Okay.
And, but it was very much based on music, and then to write, you've got to imagine yourself into the character or the situation, and then you just go with it and worry about revising later.
Right. Okay, cool, I got that.
Do you write yourself, Alex?
I write on occasion, but nothing as major as a novel. Anyway,
well, if you're writing, you understand the process, right?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I understand all of the process, but yeah, some of it, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Cool, thanks. So, Kathleen, authors who write non-fiction books, they sometimes go on a journey as they do so. Now, granted, this is a work of fiction, but from what I understand, it's close to your heart. Has working on this book done that for you? Have you gone on a journey yourself as you wrote this book out?
Oh, that's a great question. Absolutely. I think every book is a journey. This one took me deeper. If I had to say, in poetry, I wrote a book called A History of Yearning, based on art. Now, that took me pretty deep.
Okay.
But this one, the Lowell book, I studied with Robert Lowell, and he introduced me to Plath and Sexton and Bishop and all of these great poets, and, I was sort of their kid sister in a way.
Right.
And I wrote a book about that. I felt I had to write that book. I was compelled to write it because nobody else had this closeness with these various poets, and I wanted to write about how they approached their work.
Right.
And it took forever because to find the right voice, and should I be in the book or not be in the book, and
right.
There were a lot of I loved writing it, but it posed all kinds of problems.
Mm-hmm.
And in the novel Unspeakable Things, I just wrote it as honestly as I could.
Okay.
So I didn't have, it posed different problems, but these characters all had their quests.
Right.
And maybe, when I thought, and it was my third novel, and I'd already made two, I'd already messed up two, so I'd learned from that a bit.
Yeah, okay.
maybe not enough, but, I had, learned some things.
All right. Cool. Okay, so, Kathleen, I acknowledge it's not polite to mention a lady's age, so I won't. But
you can.
Yeah. Okay. But you're still the thing is you're still producing literary works at an age when most people will have hung up their spurs and are just out grazing in the pasture, so to speak. What is it that keeps you writing? What is it? Where does that creative spark come from?
I don't know. And well, my publisher, Knopf, they say they could see a debut novel by someone, by a woman aged 77, almost 78. And I go, wait, I've written lots of books before this one. But, I wouldn't say it's a debut novel.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it's what I do. It's who I am. I mean, right now I have a number of other other books that I want to, that need just a bit of attention, and they'll be okay.
Okay.
And I have to sort of look at my time. How much time do I have left?
Right.
I have another really, I think, a wonderful novel that I'm working on, but I go, Kathleen, it takes 20 years to write a good book. What are you doing?
Right.
But I love to read. I work with writers from all over the world. That's such a privilege. They come to me and I get to see their work. And, I've worked in bookstores. I've worked in every aspect of writing, and now with small presses and with the new ways of publishing that are happening. I mean, it's so interesting to me. It may seem like a very narrow field, but to me, it's totally fascinating, and I'm always learning new things and being challenged. It's just it's a life work, or it's a journey. I can't. Or maybe. I mean, we have some really great writers like Philip Roth, who decided that he'd written enough, and now he wanted to go to dinner parties.
Right.
But he is a really, really great writer. And I can see that. He's been doing it, and okay. But you see, I've been writing and going to dinner parties.
Right,
so
right.
I'm a little slower. So I'm not ready to hang up my, whatever it is, your dance shoes or whatever yet.
Right. Cool. So, it sounds like it doesn't occur to me then that you're an old person then. I mean, it occurs to me that you're still kind of like in the spring of your life. You're still curious, you're still interested, you're still eager, and that's something not many people have, really.
No, I don't think that's true. Actually, I might have thought that when I was younger. I'd kind of look at what people who seemed older, but then look, my people, they were, I mean, well, at one point, this is funny, but at one point, my son and my husband, I showed them the book, and they said, "Oh, there's not enough sex in it."
Okay.
So I'm going to rewrite it. And then and I'm very bad at sex writing, actually, but
okay.
I said, I'll try. And so I had these people jumping on and off kitchen tables and every weird position there was. And then I looked at it and I said, wait, my characters are 80. What am I doing? I listened to them and I ruined my book. So, but what is this, these 80-year-olds? So I went and rewrote it again, but and it made it a little more moderate. But actually, I think that, we all have stereotypes about age, and then you find you're living it, and it's not at all like that. And in fact, how we have stereotypes about a young person. Well, it's not at all like that. It's the sensibility.
Right.
And so, I think there are physical things, but good heavens, I'm working with people of all ages, and there's always curiosity and interest, and well, not always. If you're lucky enough to have your mind, which that's just luck, really.
Right.
We can't control that, but and I can't speak in a general way because this is the first time I've been 77, so I can't possibly make a generalization. But all of a sudden, I'm looking. I have friends who are 90.
Right.
And I'm looking at them. Gosh, what is that like? I want to learn from them.
Right. Okay, cool. I got that. Very interesting. Okay, so Kathleen, in the last couple of minutes of this interview, are there any last words of wisdom you'd like to share to inspire our listeners? Anything from your life at all?
Well, if you have that urge to write strongly, then you have to make room for it. It's like tennis. It's like practicing your tennis serve. If you don't write and you say, I'm going to wait for inspiration, which will happen every 6 months maybe, you can't progress. But if you look at it as your tennis serve, I'm sorry, there's a phone ringing. You can take this out, right?
Right, sure, no problem.
Wait. Anyway,
all right.
You need to practice every day. Anyway, the point is, if you're serious about it, then give it some time every day, even if it's only an hour. And I was working and had 2 small children, and the only way I could make it work was I would get up at 4 and write for a couple hours.
Right.
And maybe I didn't just write. Maybe I just read one inspiring poem, but I did something. You need to practice, and it's not something that just falls on you from heaven.
Right.
You can get better. You can get better, and you get better by working and revising, and so that's the first thing. 2, choose someone who loves your work to have them read it. Now, don't ask your husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend to be your critic, because they're supposed to be your cheerleader.
Okay.
They're supposed to. Okay, their role is to think everything you do is absolutely marvelous.
Right, okay.
In my mind. Choose somebody else to be the critic.
Okay.
You don't want to be fighting with or feeling that they don't love you when they say something about your writing. So I tend, except for that one big mistake, not to, Be careful who you show your work to, and when it's ready, show it to somebody you trust.
Right. Okay, cool. I got that. Okay, cool. So, in closing then, the book is Unspeakable Things. The author is our guest, Kathleen Spivack. And the website where you can find her book on is at kathleensspivack.org. That's KATHLENSPIVACK.org. So, Kathleen, wish we could talk longer. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being an AuthorStory. It's a genuine privilege to have you as our guest for this episode.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope we will meet, and I will encourage you in your writing.
Thank you very much. That's high praise coming from you.
Oh, you have to work hard, but I can see that you're already doing that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Of course, for those of you listening, if you want to own Unspeakable Things, you can get it right now by going to the Amazon link in the description below the video. And if you'd like to follow our author interviews on YouTube, just click the subscribe button. So, bye for now, and I'll be back on AuthorStory with another inspiring author.